Welcome back, everybody, to the weekly walkthrough with Alex and Graham, an MSC podcast product, I guess, part of the Varsity Podcast Network presented by Lairfield. I'm your host, Alex. Joining me as always, it's Graham. Graham, welcome back. This is going to be a good one today.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this one. This is my favorite game of the year.
I think it's, for all intents and purposes, the best rivalry game in the MAC. And before you Central and Western fan comes after me, before you Ohio Miami fans come after me, you're just wrong. and sorry, that's just how it is. It's the battle of I-75, Bowling Green, Toledo, meeting for the 89th time on the gridiron. Over 100 years of pure hatred toward each other. It's not the oldest rivalry in the MAC, and there are some other great ones, some other great close proximity ones, such as Akron-Kent State, but Northwest Ohio really turns out for this game, and they have the last couple of years, even on weeknights. We've seen over 20,000 people at these games in the middle of the week in November during midweek action. It's back on a Saturday for the first time since 2019, a win for Bowling Green, the first under Scott Loeffler down there at Deutsch Perry Stadium. And let's just dive into it. Graham, what do you have any history for us on this game? If not, no big deal. I've got a little bit more, but anything people need to know about this game before they listen to us ramble about it?
Well, what's funny is this game has had a couple of really close games the last few years. Last year with a 1-point victory for the Rockets. But what's interesting is that last year this game was at Bowling Green, and we see the Rockets walking away with a very slim victory. And 2 years ago, this game is in the Glass Bowl like it is this year, and BG walks away with a very slight victory. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking at this game. Overall, Toledo leads the series 43-41 with 4 ties as well. And Toledo has won 12 of the last 14 meetings. But what's interesting is that Bowling Green has a chance now to win 2 in a row at the Glass Bowl for the first time since the 90s. So that's kind of an interesting fact there. Really excited to see this game back the Glass Bowl. Really excited to see this game on a Saturday when the fans can really show out and appreciate it. And really, it's fun to be witnessing another battle of I-75 for that I-75 trophy. I came to Toledo just at the time when the peace pipe was being retired, and so this is my Toledo experiences with this I-75 trophy. But really, the peace pipe was the big trophy back in the day, and that one got passed around quite a bit as well.
Passed around between the teams, but also the students, from what I understand. Don't know if you knew that. It's a fun little tidbit for you. That's the historical context for that is the students and athletes would actually smoke out of the peace pipe as a sign initially of goodwill towards the other universities. They would use it during primarily basketball rivalries, and it would be a sign and a token of goodwill towards the other universities. And well, now it's just a sign of retirement as we move on to the Battle of I-75 trophy. Let's just dive into this one, Graham. We've got some good stuff on tap here. 2 very different seasons for these programs. Toledo, obviously, a massive blowout win over, frankly, let's call it what it is, SEC cellar dweller, Mississippi State. Bowling Green with heartbreaking losses to a couple of top 25 teams. But then they come home, lose a couple of games to teams, frankly, they probably shouldn't have lost to. Toledo drops one on the road to Western Kentucky, and then they've been figuring it out. They lost a tough one at Buffalo, and now we're here. Toledo 5-2, Bowling Green 3-4. What's your initial take on this game?
This is one where it can go either way. This game opened at -3 in favor of the Rockets, and that's just what we call the home field goal advantage. Is just the Rockets being the home team, they get that field goal advantage. This game is now shifted. It's -2.5 in favor of the Rockets. So we can see how close this game is, and inching ever closer, that line every day. It's gonna be a close one. You know, we talked about the last 2 games have been so close. Last year only by a single point. I expect this one to be a close one as well. You know, I don't want to spoil things, but I think my get up here tells you my pick for this game. It's gonna be my and I would say our, but for today it's just my Toledo Rockets.
You can have that for today. You know, I have a job to do and an image to uphold. I'm like Fox News, fair and balanced. And so
That's the
let's just dive. Let's no, we're gonna dive into this. We're gonna talk about these offenses here. Toledo. I mean, they've got some great playmakers, right? But I don't care about the Toledo playmakers today. I care about the Bowling Green playmakers, and they have the best playmaker in the country in Harold Fannin Jr. Not only leads all tight ends in the country in receiving yards, he leads all receivers in the MAC in receiving yards. Second, a distant second by about 300 of those yards, Jawan Newton out of Toledo. I'm excited for this battle, but I think we already know if you can't stop Harold Fannin Jr. from putting up 200 yards a game on you, it's game over.
You know, I think that's interesting. Is Harold Fannin Jr. maybe the best tight end in the country right now? Certainly the highest rated one
Is
by Pro Football Focus, and and one of those game breaking type players, especially in the Mid American Conference, where you having a big bodied, strong and athletic tight end can really result in victories a lot of the time. You know, we talked about these teams have different kind of seasons, but both of these teams are 2-1 in the conference, and that's speaks to how good these teams really are. You know, when we
mhm.
step outside of the conference, anything can happen. You can win a game against Mississippi State. You can drop a game to Western Kentucky. You can play a couple of close games, and especially close game against a Penn State team. But when it comes down to it, these rivalry game is going to be close. I think you're right. I think Harold Fannin Jr. is going to be one of the big game breakers in this game. He's going to be one of the guys who's going to determine who comes out on top here. But I'd like to take you to some less specific numbers and more team numbers. When we look at the game, what's interesting here is the way that these units break down. If we're looking at offense, Toledo has 30 points per game compared to Bowling Green's 25.1. But when we look at total yards per game, Bowling Green comes out on top with 373.3 yards per game compared to Toledo's 368.9. You'll notice how close those totals are. These offenses are very, very similar in terms of total yardage, in terms of total scoring. The difference here, Toledo's going to pass the ball a little bit more than Bowling Green is, which is interesting because we just talked about the way Harold Fannin is leading the conference in receiving yards. But on the Toledo side, we have both Jawan Newton, as well as Junior Vandeross, as well as Anthony Torres, and really this three-headed monster of a receiving threat, and not to mention Jacquez Stewart gets involved there from the running back position. This Toledo offense is varied when it comes to the passing game, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Tucker Gleason come out here and really take control of the game through the air.
Well, that's assuming, of course, Tucker Gleason is healthy. John Allen Richter started last week for the Rockets, and I mean he was fine against a really tough Northern Illinois team. You talk about Toledo passing the ball a lot, and you're right. I mean they've got the numbers to back that up. But I think when you look at passing defense, that's going to be strength against strength. Bowling Green leads the conference in passing defense, only giving up 161 yards a contest. Or, sorry, they're second in the Mid American Conference, giving up only 161 yards a contest. Northern Illinois, they've been limiting teams to 156. So this is going to be strength against strength. And I think Bowling Green, converse to Northern Illinois, has the offense that can kind of support the defense. You know, Northern Illinois is a lot of 3 and out for the offense, 3 and out for the offense. I mean, they put up 6 points a week ago. Bowling Green, they perform a lot better. And again, it's a rivalry game. So, of course, records and things don't matter. We've seen that historically in this time and time again. But I think that's going to be the battle that we need to watch. We've got strength against strength, Toledo passing offense versus the Bowling Green passing defense.
Yeah, I mean this BG passing defense is nothing to sneeze at, and they certainly have holding teams to 161 yards a game is an impressive number there. What that comes down to, though, is Bowling Green is going up against teams who are not necessarily utilizing the pass. Bowling Green has also given up 178, almost 179 yards on the ground per game, which is far higher than Toledo, only allowing 121 per game. What's interesting about this Toledo team is that we've utilized 3 different running backs in Jacquez Stewart, in I'm sorry, I'm missing in Willie Shaw, and also in Connor Wallenczak. And Connor Wallenczak leading the team right now in rushing yards. Kind of surprising, given that Jacquez Stewart came in this year as being the clear #1 back in this team. But we see Jacquez Stewart as well as Willie Shaw both missing games this year due to injuries, giving Connor Wallenczak a chance to step in there with this kind of 3-headed monster in the backfield compared to that 3-headed monster I talked about earlier in the receiving game. There's a lot of threats on this Toledo Rockets offense, and whatever Bowling Green is giving the Rockets, they'll have an opportunity to answer with something else, another weapon on the offensive side of the ball. It seems to me that this Bowling Green offense is a little one-dimensional when it comes to the passing game. Now, don't get me wrong, Terrion has been great in the backfield for this Bowling Green Falcons team, rushing the ball. But when it comes to really passing and rushing, Bowling Green seems to have just the one option each.
And I think that's fair. I mean, you look at Terrion Stewart, of course, out of the backfield for Bowling Green, 85 carries on the year, 458 yards, 4 scores. You mentioned the Bowling Green run defense has been, let's just call it what it is, less than appetizing. But then you turn and you look at the Toledo rushing offense, currently sitting at 8th in the Mid-American Conference, well behind schools like Buffalo, Western, Ohio. But interestingly enough, 22 yards behind Bowling Green, who sits at 136 rushing yards a contest. So, I think it's important to have a lot of great pieces, such as what Toledo has. But my concern is, if you're Toledo, is it too many mouths to try to feed? I think in a backfield that's as good as Toledo's, you've got to have your bell cow. And right now, nobody seemed to have really broken out. I mean, like you mentioned, Jacquez Stewart has looked like he was supposed to take over that role, but Willie Shaw, Connor Wallenczak has. I mean, it's kind of been that 3-headed monster. You also don't have DeQuan Finn, who was, for all intents and purposes, a fantastic scrambler to kind of extend plays, and I don't think Tucker Gleason has that, at least nowhere near to the level that DeQuan Finn has. And that, to me, I think sparks an interesting question. Is it too many mouths to feed in that backfield while also trying to feed your Anthony Torreses, while also feeding your Juwan Newtons, while your Larry Stevens, your Junior Vanderosses? You've got so many other pieces elsewhere. What do you do? Who do you rely on? Who's your breakout player?
Well, Jason Candle has been with this Toledo Rockets team for a long time, and he's been the head coach for 9 years now. This is someone who knows what he's doing when it comes to running, both the offense, but really the team in general. And Jason Candle is the reason that we see this 3-headed monster, both in terms of receiving and in terms of rushing for the Rockets. It's because he goes with what works. And what's working on a particular day, especially against a Bowling Green defense who some games seems like they are ready to shut somebody out, and some games they don't show up at all. A Bowling Green defense that is hard to read, especially when it comes to a rivalry game. You got to be flexible with the game plan. Having these 3 running backs allows the Rockets to be flexible. That's what it does. Whoever's having the game is the one who's going to get the rock going forward. I expect this is going to be a Jacquez Stewart game. That's, if I had to guess right now, Jacquez Stewart's going to step up. He's looked electric in the return game this year, and he's looked like he's stuck in the mud in the backfield. He's only averaging 2.9 yards per carry. This is not the Jacquez Stewart we saw last year. It's not the Jacquez Stewart we expected to see this year when he really got a chance to be a leader on this offense. I expect the rivalry game is time for him to step up and really step into that role as the leader in this backfield. But don't forget about Kyler Wanzak, who's had this opportunity, and he's really taken advantage of it. He's the leading rusher on this team. You mentioned that Tucker Gleason doesn't have the rushing ability of Daquan Finn, but I'll show you, he's the second leading rusher on the team right now, above Willie Shaw and Jacquez Stewart. So all of these guys on this offense for the Toledo Rockets can move around a lot. I think what's interesting to note here is that I don't think it's going to come down to the Rockets offense. I don't think the Toledo offense is going to make the difference in this game. I think they're going to score as much as they need to score. We've seen that throughout the year, with the exception of the Mississippi State game. It seems like the Rockets do just enough on offense to win a game, or they do just enough on defense to hold their opponents that way. What's interesting here is when the Falcons lose the turnover battle in the game, they are 0-6 in this battle of I-75. They do not win unless they win the turnover battle. And, what happens with this Toledo secondary, we have Maxon Hook at safety, who is leading the team in tackles. But we also have Brandon Alls, who's leading the MAC in interceptions. This is a team who is ready to take the ball away from opponents and is ready to step up and stop the passing attack, especially since it's so one-dimensional trying to force the ball to Harold Fannin.
I think that's an interesting approach, right? When you can rely on a guy like Harold Fannin, of course you're gonna keep throwing to him. I mean, he's got over 125 yards a contest every single week. I mean, this guy has been a wrecking ball against opposing offenses. Penn State couldn't figure him out. Texas A&M couldn't figure him out. None of these teams that they've played have been able to figure him out, and for good reason. But I think when you really break it down, you look at passing offense. Connor Bazelak has led the entire Mid-American Conference in passing offense. Now, granted, Tucker Gleason was out last week. He was out in part of the Buffalo game. John Richter came in and played the role of quarterback for the Rockets. But when you've got a guy like Connor Bazelak who can sling the ball, and this is his fifth, maybe sixth year, former Indiana quarterback, former Missouri quarterback. I mean, he has looked excellent. He's putting up 235 yards a contest. So yes, you're going to feed Harold Fannin Jr. Of course, you're going to feed your bell cow. But he's been peppering other targets. You do enough. If you get enough guys to key on Harold Fannin, that opens up a lot more. If you know that you can find a way to put 2, maybe sometimes 3 guys on him, and your opponent's going to do that, that gives you a lot of opportunity elsewhere, especially with this rest of this receiving core. The other thing that's worth noting, Bowling Green's offensive line has given Connor a lot of time to figure out where to throw the ball. That, to me, is just as important as anything else, because you got a guy who can throw, and you give him time to throw. Watch that turn into scores. Bowling Green has played some incredibly tough opponents in non-conference play. They came in a little bit beat up. Connor Bazelak didn't play much in that Northern Illinois game. You got guys who can come in. They can come in and play. They can play well. I really, really like this Bowling Green offense as long as you have a healthy offensive line and a healthy Connor Bazelak and a healthy Harold Fannin. That two-headed monster, I think, could be enough to counter this Toledo defense, who we've seen has just been. We watched Buffalo do it a couple weeks ago. Buffalo came out and said, "Hey, we're going to air raid. We're going to throw. We're going to throw. We're going to throw, and it's going to throw everything off." Buffalo came out and dominated that game. They were up 27-3 at one point, moved to 30-3. Toledo dressed the end of that game with a couple of late scores. But Bowling Green has the ability to just dot the field with passes with Connor Bazelak, led by Harold Fannin. This is going to be where Toledo collapses. And this is where we're going to see, I think, the road team be very successful for the 4th year in a row. You talked about the last two being the road teams. Go back a year further, Toledo won that game at Deutsche Perry back in 2020 or back in 2021. This is going to be something similar where we see Bowling Green come in, do what they need to do, and probably ride out of here with a victory.
Well, that remains to be seen. These BG Falcons have had a hard time in this rivalry game since the Battle of I-75 trophy was awarded. Toledo is 11-2 in these Battle of I-75 games, and I can't expect that Bowling Green's going to be able to turn things around this year. The last two meetings were close. These meetings aren't generally always very close, and the difference here is that Toledo is just the better team this time around. You're going to talk about the passing attack of the Bowling Green Falcons and the way that that Buffalo attacked the Rockets, allowed Buffalo that victory is by going through the air. But this Bowling Green offense only passes for 236 yards a game, which, when I say only, you might think that sounds like a lot, but 236 is nothing compared to the Rockets, who pass for 254 yards a game. That's an extra 20 yards. So the difference there is this Bowling Green Falcons team is not a team who throws the ball that much. And when we compare it to the Toledo Rockets through the air, you want to talk about the way that Tucker Gleason is not living up. Well, Tucker Gleason missed an entire game compared to the other side of the ball. And so this is a Toledo Rockets team who is passing at the same rate as Bowling Green is, and they're completing passes at the same rate. They just have more weapons. They can spread the field that way. Toledo has had, for the past 3 years, really, really excellent secondaries. And this is a secondary who can do the same thing. They're going to step up in a rivalry game. This defense is of course, led at the linebacker position. I love Dan Bolden. I got to say his name. The guy's going to step up there. He's going to force the Bowling Green team to go away from what they want to do, which is throw to Harold Fannin Jr. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the Rockets can stop BG on the ground. We talked about Terrion Stewart just briefly, but he's a guy who can come out and he can run. He's run for almost 500 yards on the year, and he is an impressive back as any in the Mid American Conference. What's going to be interesting is whether the Rockets defense can step up. I think they can. Maxon Hook and Dan Bolden both doing a great job in terms of tackles, shutting down rushing attacks. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's the all show in the backfield, coming up with 3 picks on the year already. I can't imagine that this Rockets team, especially after you mentioned that tune-up game against Buffalo, which turned into a loss when they traveled to Buffalo. A game where the defense really had to figure themselves out. They're going to be figured out now. They're ready to attack a passing game. They're ready to turn things over in the secondary. And Brandon Alls is going to walk away with enough turnovers this time around to make this a victory for the Rockets. This is going to be a home field advantage for Toledo this time around. They're going to win the turnover battle. And this offense is ready to start clicking. They're not quite as healthy as they were to start the season, but they are healthier than they've been the past couple of weeks. And I think they're ready to step up.
I think it's going to be, for me, when I look at the defensive side of the ball for the Falcons, I mean, to Toledo's credit, a lot of fantastic players making some great plays. You've got Maxon Hook, of course, who is one of the top 4 tacklers in the MAC this year. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, again, one of the top 8 in the MAC this year. And then Dan Bolden, he's one of the top 15 in the MAC. All great players. For me, it's who can get into the backfield. And I look at the Bowling Green side. Charles Rosser has been excellent disrupting the outside linebacker for Bowling Green. He's a senior. Has been excellent about getting past the offensive line, getting to the quarterback, getting to the running back behind the line of scrimmage. And I think that's going to be critical. Joseph Sipp as well, another senior linebacker. This two-headed monster on the defensive side for Bowling Green, those are guys you have to watch out for. And then in the secondary, I think it is important to be able to tackle guys behind the line of scrimmage, but it's just as important to be able to tackle them downfield. You've got CJ Brown, the junior safety, who has been excellent. He has been locking it down. He's Bowling Green's Maxon Hook. Now, I don't think he has the pedigree or the profile of Maxon Hook, but he's quietly one of the top 20 tacklers in the Mid-American Conference. And right behind him is Joseph Sipp Jr. These guys, this is a team that I'm really, really defensively impressed with. I want to go back to your earlier point where you talked about Toledo has won 11 or has gone 11-2 in the updated trophy, the Battle of I-75 trophy. To that point, Toledo has had how many different head coaches in that time period? Do you know?
2.
3. So Tim Beckman, of course, for 2 of those games, Matt Campbell for 3 of them, and then Jason Candle for everything since. Do you know how many Bowling Green has had in that same time period?
I don't know how many coaches Bowling Green has had.
7. Bowling Green has, they had Dave Clausen, who we all know. They had Adam Shearer, which is feels a little close to home. We've had Dino Babers, who we know went off to do great things. Well, not so great things at Syracuse, but he went off to Syracuse. Then we had Brian Ward come in for a year. Then we had the disastrous Mike Jinks era. Everybody knows Mike Jinks should not have sniffed a college football field, let alone a Division I college football field. He was an offensive coordinator hired out of Texas, and this was his first coaching gig, and we watched Bowling Green get smacked around. For recency bias, I think it's far more fair to look at the consistencies in the rivalry. Bowling Green has had Scott Loeffler for the last 5 years. He's 2-3. Not bad when your program had been 0-4 the previous 8 years in this rivalry game. Jason Candle has been consistent, and he's done a great job leading Toledo to a winning record against Bowling Green. But I think it's more fair to look at what Scott Loeffler has done versus Jason Candle. Not to discount what Mike Jinks did, because frankly he didn't do anything, so there's no discounting. But I think you have to be able to, and you have to be willing to look at Scott Loeffler, Jason Candle. There's no denying that Scott Loeffler has done more with less talent, which is why, despite Toledo being the better team, really, I think all 5 years since Scott Loeffler's been at Bowling Green, he's pulled away 2 victories and almost pulled off a third last year.
That's an interesting argument to make for a coach who has a losing record. If your argument is that we should only focus on the Scott Loeffler years, we're still talking about a losing record, and we're talking about a coach who came in and won in his first year. So your argument about having Bowling Green having all of these other coaches, it just doesn't hold up. The idea that somehow Bowling Green can't win with coaches who are in their first year obviously is untrue. Scott Loeffler did it. So if we're focusing on Scott Loeffler, the guy has a losing record against Toledo. If we're focusing on Bowling Green as a whole, there's no reason not to focus on them as a whole over that time, because we know first-year head coaches at Bowling Green can win this game. So the argument, it just rings false. The fact of the matter is Jason Candle has been a better coach than Scott Loeffler has. Let's talk about Scott Loeffler. Let's talk about his 23-39 record at Bowling Green.
He's been a better coach by a point.
No, he's been a better coach by MAC championships. He's been a better coach by record. He's been a better coach of, let's not just focus on the rivalry games. Let's remember that coaches coach the entire season, Alex, not just one game. It's sure, I know you would like it
coaches
if all your work was only
win,
judged.
They keep their jobs over rivalry games.
And how long has Jason Candle been at Toledo?
He's been there for 9 years, and he's won 2 championships.
And how long has Scott Loeffler been at Bowling Green?
This is year 6, and he's
so
gotten a lot closer.
Your argument is that coaches keep their jobs over rivalry games. Jason Candle's done a great job in rivalry games. He's only lost 2.
And you're not wrong on that. But look at what happened to these other coaches.
You're telling me to focus on Scott Loeffler at the exclusion of Jason Candle. That's not the way the game is played, sir. There are 2 teams. You've got
a Jason Candle who you just said has a winning record against Bowling Green, correct? No denying that, right?
What do you want
no
me to
denying
say?
that, right?
He has a winning record.
He has a winning record against Bowling Green. What did Jason Candle inherit? Did he inherit a Mike Jinks led Toledo team, or a Matt Campbell-led Toledo team who beat Arkansas on the road, who beat Iowa State, who knocked off multiple Power 4 now or then Power 5 teams.
I would listen to the rest of this argument, except for the fact that Scott Loeffler won in his first year. It must not have been that beaten up.
Or maybe Jason Candle wasn't that great of a coach.
I mean, maybe he wasn't, but he clearly is now. He's 70-37 with the Toledo Rockets compared to Scott Loeffler's losing record
the rest of that year.
Look at how bad BG
was the rest of that year.
Scott Loeffler has a losing record. I don't know.
Scott Loeffler has a losing record to Toledo by a point.
No, he has a losing record in general. You want to keep turning this back to the rivalry argument? I'm telling you,
that's all that matters right now.
Scott Loeffler is 23-39. Okay, let's talk about the rivalry. Scott Loeffler has a losing record against Toledo
by a point with far less talent. Far less talent, sir. Toledo's had the highest recruiting class in the MAC for like a decade now.
And we all know that recruiting class rankings are always correct. My argument here, Alex, is you just made an argument before about how talented this Bowling Green Falcons team was. Harold Fannin Jr. is the best receiver in the entire country. That's what you told me. You tried to tell me
best tight end in the entire country. I want to be clear. Best receiver in the MAC. Let's pump the brakes on country.
So we just looked at this and we just said how talented this Bowling Green team is. And now you're turning around to telling me, but they're not that talented. Scott Loeffler is a great coach. That's why this team is so great. Alex, you got to pick an argument, man. Either they're talented or they're not. The fact of the matter is Scott Loeffler.
I don't want to discredit any of the Bowling Green talent, but I want to be clear. Scott Loeffler has elevated this Bowling Green team, and he's taken essentially nothing, and he's finally turned it into something. You remember watching those Mike Jinks teams. You and I have talked about those Mike Jinks teams and how awful they were and how it set Bowling Green back a millennia in college football. Scott Loeffler resurrected this Bowling Green team, this Bowling Green program that he inherited. His first year, they went 3-9. And what did they do to Toledo? Beat them 20-6 at home. Toledo finished that year 7-5, 6-6 maybe. Toledo was a much better team. Who had the better game plan that day? Who had the team better prepared that day? That's what I'm talking about. Scott Loeffler has been able to take...
That's a strong argument.
Scott Loeffler has been able to take nothing
who was able
and bring
to
it
surprise
forward
this team.
To make them better.
Able to surprise this team. He's not going to surprise Jason Candle anymore. And now
he surprised him 2 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about 2 years ago. Let's talk about last year. Let's talk about this year.
You're telling me Jason Candle wasn't sweating in that locker room, down 25 at halftime?
And what happened?
They eked out a lucky fourth down conversion to win that game.
So your argument is that the Toledo Rockets won last year on luck.
Absolutely.
So then how can we not talk about the first half for Bowling Green being luck?
I mean, that was clear domination. That was clear game plan, scheduling, and scheming. I'll admit, Bowling Green's defense collapsed worse than the 2008 housing market in the second half of that game. I'll admit that. But it still took Toledo a fourth down conversion to pull off the win.
And big teams show up in big places. And big players.
Good teams win. I'll give you that. But great teams
the better team won
Toledo
last year.
didn't cover.
You want to reduce everything down to betting lines, then I suppose you're correct. The fact of the matter is we're not talking about betting lines right now. We're talking about who's going to walk away victorious on Saturday, and that's going to be not your, Toledo Rockets.
Well, I hate to say it. It's the snubbing of your Toledo Rockets towards the Falcon marching band that is going to propel these Falcons to victory. Also, Harold Fannin Jr. doing Harold Fannin things. But the road team gets it again this year. I think Bowling Green comes into the Glass Bowl. They understand what's on the line. They have a renewed sense of this rivalry. They understand the importance of this rivalry, and that this is essentially a MAC championship elimination game with no longer having divisions. They understand what's on the line, what's at stake. Scott Loeffler has his team ready to go. They come into a striped out Glass Bowl. However, Toledo's planning on doing that, and they beat the Rockets at home. And, they ground the Rockets. They claw up the Rockets. They tear out the engines, and they say, nope, this is our stadium, and we'll call it Deutsch Perry North here in the Glass City. Falcon.
Wow, that would be a very bad change. Deutsche Perry is just 100% a worse name for a stadium than the Glass Bowl. But if you think the Birds can beat the Rockets, well, I think you are smoking something, my friend. Did you find the old peace pipe trophy?
I hear you, and I appreciate what you said, but I'm pretty sure you told me Ohio was going to win last week, and I don't know, my friend. We saw how that one went.
Well, maybe it's time to get a little bit of payback over here. I think the fact of the matter is that well, the Rockets are going to win. We'll leave it at that.
All right, we'll see.
I don't need to pull on my drawer of used references about the 2008 financial crisis. I can just go ahead and tell you that the Rockets have the better team, the better coach, and the better venue.
So when they lose, what's next? You guys got to get rid of Jason Candle. Fire Jason Candle. Extinguish the flame.
You're right. Anybody who has a losing record in the MAC after this year should be fired.
Agreed. Yep. So if you suck in the MAC this year, you're fired.
Overall, losing record overall, of course.
So you're of course taking the Rockets to pull it off at home. I'm going with the road Warriors. BG Falcons going to roll along. Anything else on this one before we move into our weekly pick'em segment, Graham?
I don't want to open up anything else here, but I forgot to mention Anthony Torres. The Rockets have their own excellent tight end. He's not quite a Harold Fannin Jr., but I would be remiss if I didn't mention his name.
Fair enough. Well, that's going to do it for that, guys. You know where the battle lines have been drawn. Graham going with the Rockets. I, of course, representing the Falcons out of Bowling Green. Shout out to the BG softball team for the sweatshirt. Appreciate you guys. And before we head into our MAC college football schedule pick'em, got to talk to you guys about the Varsity Podcast Network. It is a free app to download in the Apple Store, the Google Play Store. Download it today. It's presented by Learfield, when they've done a great job of compiling all of the live audio broadcasts for every sport across the country for all your favorite college teams. So let's say you want to listen to this Toledo Bowling Green game on the road. You can't be in the Glass Bowl. Unfortunately, like myself, won't be able to be there. But you want to listen to this game. You want to listen to the call. You can download it. Listen to Todd Walker out of Bowling Green. Make the call. Todd Walker, great guy, by the way. If you guys don't interact with him, fantastic broadcast voice. You can listen to him and make the call from the Glass Bowl. You can get the sounds of the stadium. You can hear the bands playing. You can hear the fans screaming. You can hear the calls, the analysis in real time on this app. Maybe you want to wait and download something for, I don't know, let's say baseball season. Graham and I are big baseball fans. You're going to be able to listen to all the MAC games on this app live during baseball season. It's a great app. Also, the best part, you can download this app and you can listen to your favorite college podcast, such as yours truly. You can listen to podcasts such as the Sickos Committee, Group of Five Guys, and hundreds of other podcasts, all for free. You just have to download it, create your account, sign up today, download the Varsity app by Learfield. It's well worth having on your phone.
Love the app.
Gotta love the app. Let's talk these this slate of games, Graham. It's everybody's playing MAC games. Finally, we are fully into conference play. We are done with the out of conference. Ball State almost pulled off a they played a much closer, but almost pulled off a surprise victory. It was tied 14-14 going into the final quarter of that game with Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, of course, winning 24-14. But now we're all playing MAC games. Everybody's excited, geared up for what should be a good weekend of college football. And I'll just start right off the top. We've got Buffalo at Ohio at noon on the CBSN Sports Network. The line is Ohio by 6 down there at Peden Stadium. Defend the Frank is what the Bobcat faithful like to say. What are your thoughts on that one?
Goodness, this is a trap game. It's a game that Ohio should win. Ohio is a more talented team than Buffalo. They are at home. They are defending the Frank. And they should win this game. Buffalo has been the spoiler in the MAC this year. They have been stepping up when they shouldn't be winning games, and they have been losing when they should be. I have no idea what to call here. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bobcats because I know they won't let me down 2 weeks in a row.
Go Bobcats in that one, it sounds like, from Graham. We've got next up Central Michigan at Miami, Ohio, down there in Oxford at Yager Stadium, 2 o'clock kick over on ESPN Plus. Miami -12. Man, we got a lot of lines that are just there's no half point here. So this one -12 for Miami at home. What's your take on this one?
Miami showed me a lot last week against Ohio. They look like they are finally shaping up into the team that we thought they were going to be in the preseason. Everybody had this team picked to roll to back-to-back MAC championships, and they didn't look very great to start the year. But I think they're connecting. I think they're kind of coming together as a team. Miami is going to win this one.
All right, moving on down the slate, we've got Eastern Michigan at Akron. This one's interesting. I'm looking at this line for the first time. 3:30 kick over on ESPN Plus down at InfoCision Stadium, over near you, a couple blocks away. We've got Eastern Michigan slated to win this one by 2.5. I don't know, Graham. Similar to you, that feels like a trap game from the Buffalo, Ohio one. This one feels like it could be another trap game.
Yeah, I mean, this is an Akron team who has been fighting to find their victories this year. This is a team that has not been very good recently and has not been very good this year. So they're fighting to find places where they can pull out wins. This feels like one that maybe they can. At home against Eastern Michigan, it is a MAC matchup, which means that anything can happen. Eastern should be the better team here, but I'm going to take the Zips.
Moving on, we've got Northern Illinois at Ball State, the battle for the Bronze Stalk. The other rivalry game going on in the Mid-American Conference this week. Interestingly enough, this is a newer rivalry trophy, but these teams have been playing for a while. It's at 3:30 over on ESPN at Schumann Stadium down there in Muncie. Line is Northern Illinois by 11.5. I'm not sure about this, so I'm going to let you kind of make a call on this one.
This is another game where Ball State, last week they looked like a different team than we've seen this year. Northern Illinois recently has not looked like the team who started the year. It's going to be interesting to see how all of these MAC teams come into the finish and where they're at come conference championship time. Now, I just have to say, you mentioned the Bronze Stalk is one of the newer trophies in the MAC. It's also my favorite trophy in the MAC. I love that Bronze Stalk trophy. Pardon me. But this one I got too excited about, and I think that this is a Husky victory. Northern Illinois is going to walk away with my favorite trophy, and who knows? Maybe they send it to me, and I get to keep it for a week. Let me know.
Maybe they'll send you a mini one. That'd be pretty cool, right? We've already discussed Bowling Green Toledo. We won't go into that one any further. It is Toledo by 2.5. Over at the ESPN Plus at 3:30. They're in Toledo at the Glass Bowl. But the final game of the day, a lot of 3:30 games here for the MAC this week. Kent State at Western Michigan, 3:30 over on ESPN Plus. Up at Waldo Stadium in Kalamazoo. Broncos by 18 at home. I mean, that feels pretty accurate.
This is Kent State's been on an impressive streak lately, and they're going to continue that streak. This is the 17th loss in a row for the Golden Flashes. Western Michigan walks out with an easy victory here at home, and Kent State still looking for their first victory of the season.
There it is, guys. You have it. You have the slate of games for the MAC this week, and a lot of exciting games happening. Particularly interested in a couple of these that have one-loss teams in them. Western Michigan, the lone undefeated in conference play, sitting at 3-0, top of the conference. Everybody else jockeying for a projected a second team to finish and head to Detroit. So a lot going on with that, but it should be a good weekend of games. Really looking forward to seeing who shakes out and who starts to slowly emerge to make their way to Detroit. Should be a good time. Guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. As always, really appreciate the love, support. Thanks to you guys, over 3,400 followers on Twitter X. And for some reason, you guys keep sticking around. I'm not upset. I'm just very surprised. There are way better looking and better informed people to be following on Twitter. And you guys are sticking with me and sticking with Graham. I think actually bringing Graham on has been a big boost to that. So shout out to you, Graham, for being the good looking one here.
Did you expect me to disagree? I don't.
Oh, I thought you'd maybe throw me a compliment, but I guess not. So anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Again, the love and support has been awesome. If you guys aren't following along, you can check it down here. We've got all of the social media handles have been scrolling all episode long. You guys should have seen those, but if not, Twitter X at the MSC Podcast, Instagram at the MSC Podcast, TikTok, you guessed it, at the MSC Podcast, and YouTube at MSC Podcast. Download episodes wherever you can find podcasts, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google. Really, that's going to be it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.